For someone, the vote had been unanimous. Every species in the Galactic Council raised their hands, clicked their mandibles, or pulsed their bioluminescent signals in agreement. Earth would be enslaved. Humanity, they claimed, was too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be left alone. They called it a mercy. They called it order. They called it justice. But to the people of Earth, it was just another invasion. The Armada arrived without warning. Thousands of ships, each larger than cities, darkened the skies over every continent. Their hulls shimmered with energy shields. Their weapons hummed with power drawn from dying stars. The Kavor led the charge. Tall, armored warriors with eyes like molten iron and voices that cracked stone. Behind them came the Zenthar, sleek and silent, their insectoid ships moving like ghosts through the void. And then the Morelli, merchants turned conquerors. Their vessels bloated with cargo meant to strip Earth of everything useful. Water, minerals, genetic material, even memories. They expected surrender within hours. After all, human history was full of war, but also full of collapse under pressure. They had studied Earth's conflicts, its betrayals, its divisions. They assumed humanity would fracture the moment real force arrived. But they were wrong. Deep in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, Captain Daniel Cruz watched the alien fleet descend on a dozen screens. His face was tired, his uniform stained with coffee and sweat, but his eyes were sharp. He had been preparing for this moment since the first alien probe entered the solar system 3 years ago. Back then, no one believed him. Now everyone listened. "They think we'll kneel," he said, voice low. "Let's show them what kneeling looks like when it's done with teeth." Across the planet, hidden bases came alive. Old missile silos, repurposed space stations, even civilian satellites armed with jury-rigged weapons, all sprang into action. Humanity had spent the last decade scavenging, copying, and improving alien tech from crashed scouts and abandoned outposts. They didn't have the firepower of the Armada, but they had something better: desperation and creativity. The first real fight happened near Lagrange Point 2, a quiet spot in space where Earth's and the Moon's gravity balanced like a scale. The Zenthar sent a fleet of 5 dreadnoughts to secure it, planning to turn it into a staging ground. They never saw the trap. Lisa Moran, a quiet engineer from Oregon with grease under her nails and equations tattooed on her arms, had spent months building a gravity pulse weapon from stolen Zenthar core fragments and old NASA schematics. She called it the Hiccup. It didn't explode. It didn't fire lasers. It just bent space for a fraction of a second, long enough to collapse the Zenthar's delicate warp fields. When the pulse fired, the 5 dreadnoughts didn't blow up. They folded in on themselves like crumpled paper, their crews screaming as artificial gravity failed and oxygen vanished. The entire fleet went dark in under 10 seconds. News of the loss reached the Galactic Council faster than light. For the first time, doubt flickered in their ranks. How could primitive humans disable Zenthar warships? The Zenthar demanded answers. The Morelli grew nervous. Only the Kavor laughed, calling it a fluke. But it wasn't a fluke. It was the beginning. On Mars, a small human colony, officially abandoned, secretly reinforced, launched a swarm of drone fighters made from mining bots and old rover parts. They latched onto Kavor supply ships like metal ticks, chewing through hulls with plasma torches and dumping oxygen into the vacuum. 3 ships were lost before the Kavor realized what was happening. Meanwhile, in Earth orbit, Daniel Cruz led a ragtag squadron of modified freighters and retired military shuttles. They didn't try to win in open battle. Instead, they played cat and mouse using debris fields and old satellite networks as cover. They hit hard, vanished fast, and left behind chaos. The aliens struggled to adapt. Their sensors were built to track energy signatures, not cold, silent ships coasting on momentum. Their tactics assumed logic, not madness. When a human pilot rammed a Kavor cruiser with a cargo hauler full of frozen nitrogen, blowing a hole the size of a football field in its side, the Kavor commander actually paused his advance to demand an explanation. "Why would you do that?" He broadcast in broken English. "You died for nothing." The reply came from a civilian frequency, calm and clear. "We die for everything." That phrase spread. It was painted on walls in London, whispered in tunnels under Tokyo, carved into ice in Antarctica. It became a promise. Back on Earth, people weren't just fighting. They were building. Farms turned into factories. Schools became coding hubs. Children learned to hack alien comms while their parents welded armor onto school buses. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Lisa Moran, now working from a mobile lab in the Nevada desert, managed to crack part of the Zenthar communication code. She discovered the council wasn't as united as it seemed. The Morelli were already calculating losses. The Zenthar feared another hiccup. Only the Kavor wanted total war. She sent the intel to Daniel. He didn't hesitate. He planned a strike not on a ship but on a symbol. The Kavor command hub orbiting Mars was their pride. A fortress of black alloy and burning banners. Taking it seemed impossible. But Daniel had an idea. Using a captured Morelli scout ship, stripped, cleaned, and reprogrammed by Lisa's team, a small human crew slipped past enemy lines. They didn't fire a shot until they were inside the hub's docking bay. Then chaos erupted. Smoke bombs, sonic grenades, and old-fashioned fists did what lasers couldn't. They created panic. In the confusion, Daniel downloaded the Kivor's entire battle plan for Earth's invasion. He also found something else. Recordings of council debates, private messages, proof that the vote to enslave Earth had been rushed, pressured, and possibly rigged by Kivor hardliners. When he broadcast that data across every open channel in the solar system, the effect was immediate. Neutral systems that had stayed silent began asking questions. Former allies of the council demanded explanations. Even some Kavor officers questioned their orders. The armada slowed. Supply lines stretched thin. Morale dropped. And for the first time, the aliens looked down at Earth not with contempt but with something new. Fear. Humanity wasn't broken. It wasn't begging. It was fighting back with everything it had. Brains, guts, and a stubborn refusal to disappear. The war was far from over, but the message was clear. Earth was not a prize to be taken. It was a storm to be survived, and the storm was just getting started. Part 2. The victory at Mars changed everything. The Kavor command hub was gone. Its secrets spilled across the stars like blood and water. Alien fleets that once moved with perfect unity now drifted in confusion. Orders came slower. Responses grew hesitant. The Galactic Council, once proud and certain, began to whisper behind closed doors. The Morelli were the first to pull back. They were traders, not warriors, and their ships carried profit, not just weapons. Every lost vessel was a wound to their economy. Their envoy, a tall being named Kreltan with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that blinked sideways, sent a quiet signal through a dead-comm satellite near Jupiter. It was encrypted in a pattern only human engineers could recognize, a sequence based on prime numbers, the same method humans once used to shout into the void, hoping someone would answer. Lisa Moran found the signal while calibrating a new sensor array in her desert lab. At first, she thought it was noise, but then she saw the pattern repeat, clean and deliberate. She brought it to Daniel Cruz, who listened to the translated message alone in his command tent. "We do not wish to burn your world," Kreltan's voice said, smooth and careful. "But honor binds us to the council. If there is a way to end this without more loss, tell us." Daniel didn't trust it, but he also knew war couldn't last forever. Earth was running low on fuel, food, and time. He sent a reply. "Meet us at the edge of the asteroid belt. No weapons, 1 ship each." The meeting happened 3 days later. Lisa went with him not as a soldier but as a witness. They flew in a patched-up freighter named the Daisy, painted white with green stripes, a joke from the crew, a nod to old Earth flowers. The Morelli ship was sleek and silver, shaped like a teardrop. It hovered silently as a ramp lowered. Kreltan stepped out alone. He wore no armor, only a long robe stitched with glowing threads. He bowed slightly, a gesture Lisa recognized from old diplomatic archives. "You fight like ghosts," he said. "You strike and vanish. You turn our strength against us. Why not just talk from the start?" "Because no one listens to the weak," Daniel replied. "Now you're listening." They spoke for hours. Lisa watched silent as Daniel laid out Earth's terms. Leave. Not as conquerors, but as guests. Share tech. Open trade. Stop the bombing. Kreltan didn't agree, but he didn't say no. He asked for time. Daniel gave him 48 hours. Meanwhile, the Zenthar grew restless. Their insect minds thrived on order, and the chaos of human resistance made them twitchy. They launched a surprise strike on a refugee camp in northern Canada, thinking it was a hidden weapons depot. They were wrong. It held families, teachers, doctors, people who had lost everything but still shared what little they had. The attack was brutal. Plasma fire melted the snow and turned the ground to glass. But someone survived. A teenage girl named Mia, hiding in a collapsed freezer, recorded the whole thing on a cracked tablet. She uploaded it before the signal died. The video spread like wildfire, not just through human networks, but into neutral systems, black markets, even council channels. In the footage, Zenthar drones hovered over burning tents scanning for life signs. When they found a crying child, they didn't rescue it. They tagged it for processing. The camera cut out after that. The backlash was instant. Species that had stayed neutral now condemned the Zenthar. Even the Morelli sent a formal protest. The Zenthar High Command tried to deny it, but the truth was out. Their image as precise, honorable warriors shattered. Now they were seen as butchers. On Earth, the attack did something else. It united people who had been arguing for weeks over food rations and shelter space. Anger turned into action. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Engineers worked through the night. Farmers turned tractors into mobile shield generators. The planet, battered and bleeding, stood a little taller. Daniel used the moment. He ordered a new kind of raid, not to destroy but to expose. Using hacked Zenthar codes, Lisa guided a team of stealth drones into their main supply depot near Europa. The drones didn't explode. They broadcast. Live footage showed crates labeled human specimens, neural harvest units, and compliance. Collars, the galactic public, watched in horror as Zenthar workers sorted human belongings like trash. The council called an emergency session. The Morelli demanded answers. The Zenthar blamed rogue units. The Kavor called everyone weak. But the damage was done. Support for the war crumbled. Back on Earth, Lisa had another breakthrough. She finally cracked the cloaking matrix from the scout ship they'd captured months ago. It wasn't perfect, it only worked in shadow and for short bursts, but it was enough. She installed it on a dozen fighter craft, painted them matte black, and called them shadows. Their first mission was simple: cut the enemy's throat quietly. They targeted fuel convoys, relay stations, and comms buoys. No explosions, no warnings, just silence, then absence. Alien commanders reported ships vanishing mid-transmission. Supplies never arrived. Orders went unanswered. The Kavor, furious, doubled their patrols. But they were chasing ghosts. Daniel used the confusion to plan something bigger. He gathered every working ship, freighters, shuttles, even old space tourism capsules, and formed a fake armada near Venus. He lit up every signal, played loud engine noise, and broadcast fake troop movements. The Kavor took the bait. They sent half their fleet to intercept. While they were distracted, the real strike hit their backup command post near the moon. Lisa's shadow slipped in, planted charges on the reactor core, and vanished. The explosion lit up the night sky for millions on Earth. It wasn't just a win, it was a message. You thought we were prey. Now you're the hunted. The Morelli made their choice. 46 hours after the meeting, Krelton sent a new signal. His people were withdrawing, not just from Earth's orbit, but from the entire Sol system. They would no longer support the Council's war. Other minor species followed, some out of fear, others out of shame. Only the Kavor remained, their pride wounded but unbroken. Their warlord, a brute named Vorkon, declared that Earth would burn for its insolence. He didn't care about allies. He didn't care about opinion. He would glass the planet himself if he had to. But even his own soldiers hesitated. Whispers spread through their ranks. Stories of human traps, of weapons that didn't kill but made you wish you were dead, of children who fought with fire in their eyes. Fear, once unknown to the Kavor, began to take root. On Earth, people felt it too. The shift in the wind. The war wasn't over, but the balance had tipped. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were winning. And for the first time since the Armada arrived, someone outside Earth dared to hope that humanity might not just endure, but rise. The stars watched, and for once they were afraid. Part 3. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, where the wind never reached and the sun hadn't touched the ground in months, a secret waited. It had no name on official maps, no listing in military logs. To most of the world, it didn't exist. But to a handful of scientists and soldiers who had spent years in the cold dark, it was the last hope. Project Echo. Lisa Moran had heard rumors of it since she was a student. They said it was a failed experiment, a waste of billions, a ghost project buried under layers of bureaucracy and ice. But after the alien invasion began, old files resurfaced, buried in encrypted archives marked, "Do not activate under any circumstance," were schematics for a device that didn't shoot, burn, or explode. It sent out a pulse, a wave of tuned energy that matched the natural frequency of certain alien brain structures. It didn't kill. It shut them down. For weeks, Lisa worked with a small team in the Antarctic bunker, piecing together broken hardware and half-finished code. The original designers were long gone, some dead, some missing. But the core idea remained. Using parts scavenged from Zenthar neural scanners and Cavor comms relays, they rebuilt the array. It hummed like a sleeping beast. Coils of silver wire wrapped around a central crystal that glowed faint blue in the dark. Daniel Cruz arrived by snowcrawler, his face windburned and his coat stiff with frost. He didn't ask if it would work. He asked when it would be ready. Soon, Lisa said, but we've never tested it on live targets. If it backfires, it could fry every electronic system on the continent. Then we test it on them, Daniel said, nodding toward the sky. The Kivor had grown desperate. With their allies gone and their supply lines cut, they changed tactics. Instead of waiting in orbit, they sent ground forces. Drop pods slammed into the ice near the South Pole, spilling out armored warriors with plasma rifles and snarling voices. They came for the bunker. They knew something was there. The human defenders were outnumbered 10-1. They held the outer tunnels with rifles, grenades, and sheer will. But they wouldn't last long. The Kavor broke through the second gate just as Lisa finished the final calibration. "We're out of time," she told Daniel over the comms. "I can fire it now, but the range is limited. It'll only cover the base and maybe a few kilometers beyond." "Do it," he said. She pressed the sequence. The crystal flared. A low hum filled the chamber, then silence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, outside, the Kavor stopped. They didn't fall. They didn't scream. They just froze, eyes wide, muscles locked. Some dropped to their knees, twitching. Others stood like statues, breath fogging in the cold air, but minds blank. Their weapons clattered to the ice. Their comms filled with static. The pulse had worked. Inside the bunker, Lisa watched on monitors as the alien warriors writhed in silent agony. Their neural networks, so advanced and so alien, had been overloaded by a frequency they'd never encountered. It wasn't pain, not exactly. It was like every thought, every command, every memory had been scrambled at once. They were awake but trapped inside broken minds. After 10 minutes, the effect faded. The Kavor began to stir, confused, disoriented. But by then, human squads had moved in. They disarmed the aliens without a single shot fired. The Kavor didn't resist. They looked at their hands like they'd never seen them before. News of what happened spread fast. A recording of the event, grainy, shaky but real, was sent to every surviving human outpost. Then through hacked channels it leaked into alien networks. The Morelli saw it. The Zenthar saw it. Even neutral systems watched in stunned silence. They called it the Echo Plague. They said it was a weapon that stole your mind. They said it turned warriors into children. None of it was true, but fear doesn't need truth. It only needs a spark. The Zenthar, already shaken by their own losses, recalled every ship from the Sol system within hours. Their high command issued a statement. Humanity is not to be engaged, under any circumstance. The Morelli sent a formal apology and offered medical aid, though they knew Earth didn't need it. Only the Kavor refused to believe. Vorikon, their warlord, called the Antarctic event a trick, a one-time fluke. He ordered a full-scale assault on the planet. Not just a raid. Not just a warning, total annihilation. He would burn the cities, melt the ice caps, and salt the oceans. Earth would be a cinder and humanity a footnote. His armada gathered at the edge of the solar system. Over 200 ships, the last of the Kivor fleet, fueled by rage and pride. They didn't hide. They broadcast their approach on every frequency, a final declaration of dominance. But Earth was ready. Lisa had spent the days after the Antarctic test improving the Echo array. She linked it to orbital relays, boosted its power with stolen Zenthar capacitors, and programmed it to fire in pulses not just once. It could now cover half the planet, if aimed right. She also built smaller versions, portable units that could be dropped from drones or carried by soldiers. Daniel used the time to prepare a trap. He knew the Kavor would come straight for Earth's heart, North America, Europe, the old centers of power. So he left them empty. He moved people underground into old subway tunnels, mines, and military bunkers. Then he filled the cities with decoys. Heat emitters, fake radio chatter, drone crowds walking empty streets. When the Kavor arrived, they saw a planet ripe for conquest. Lights still shone in New York. Cars moved in London. Voices chattered in Tokyo. They didn't know it was all a stage. They began their bombardment. Plasma fire rained down on Chicago, Berlin, Shanghai. Buildings melted. Streets turned to glass, but no screams followed, no panic, just silence. That's when Lisa fired the Echo Pulse from orbit. It wasn't aimed at the ground. It was aimed at the ships. The wave hit the Kavor fleet like a silent storm. On every bridge, every cockpit, every command deck, warriors froze. Their fingers hovered over triggers. Their eyes went blank. For 3 full minutes, the armada hung in the sky, dead in the water. Daniel didn't waste a second. Human fighters, small, fast, and cloaked in shadow, shot upward. They didn't fire missiles. They planted magnetic charges on the hulls of the biggest ships. Then they vanished. The explosions came one by one, bright flowers of fire against the black. The Kavor fleet, once unstoppable, broke apart like rotten wood. Vorkon's flagship was the last to fall. He regained control just in time to see his fleet destroyed. He screamed into the void, a sound of pure rage before his ship spun out of orbit and crashed into the Pacific. On Earth, people emerged from the bunkers. They saw the smoke, the fire, the ruins. But they also saw the sky clear for the first time in months. No ships, no shadows. Just stars. The Echo hadn't killed, but it had broken the enemy's will. And somewhere in the ruins of a quiet town in Kansas, a child looked up and whispered, "We did it." No one corrected her, because for the first time it felt true. Part 4. The Kavor were not done. Even with their fleet shattered and their warlord dead, their pride burned hotter than their plasma cannons. From the wreckage of their flagship, a new voice rose. General Torvak, a veteran of 100 battles with scars across his face and fire in his eyes. He refused to accept defeat. He called the loss at Earth a betrayal by weak allies, not a true test of Kavor strength. And he had one last card to play. Deep in Kavor space, hidden behind a dying star, sat the Iron Maw, a warship so massive it was more like a floating city. It carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. It had never been used, saved only for the direst hour. Torvak declared that hour had come. He would come alone if he had to. He would burn Earth clean. The warning came through a broken Zenthar relay. Lisa Moran picked it up while scanning deep space frequencies. The message was simple: we return. You will not survive. Daniel Cruz didn't panic. He gathered every ship that could still fly. Freighters patched with metal sheets. Old satellites armed with scrap cannons. Even civilian yachts fitted with missile racks. It wasn't much. Maybe 30 vessels in total. But they were fast, smart, and full of people who had nothing left to lose. They wouldn't wait for the Iron Maw to reach Earth. They would meet it at the edge of the solar system, near the Oort cloud where comets drifted like ghosts and sunlight was just a memory. It was the perfect place for an ambush. Lisa had been busy. She'd taken the Echo tech and made it smaller, sharper. She built dozens of drone-sized emitters, each powered by a tiny fusion cell. They didn't need to disable the whole ship. Just blind its sensors, scramble its comms, and confuse its targeting systems for a few seconds. That would be enough. The human fleet moved out in silence. No radio chatter. No engine flares. They coasted on momentum, hidden in the shadow of icy rocks. For days they waited. Then on the 7th night, the Iron Maw appeared. It was worse than they imagined. Black as space itself, lined with glowing red veins of energy. It moved slow, but with unstoppable weight. Torvak wasn't hiding. He wanted them to see it. He wanted them to run. They didn't run. Lisa launched the first wave of drones. They zipped through the dark like fireflies sticking to the Iron Maw's hull. When they activated, the ship shuddered. Lights flickered. Weapon turrets spun wildly, firing at nothing. Torvak roared over open comms, demanding answers. That was the signal. Daniel's fleet struck from all sides. They didn't aim for the armor. They aimed for the weak points: engine vents, coolant lines, sensor arrays. They fired not with big bombs, but with smart mines that burrowed deep before exploding. One freighter, piloted by a former truck driver named Ray, flew straight into a weapons bay and detonated his entire cargo of liquid nitrogen. The blast froze a whole section of the ship solid. Torvak fought back hard. The Iron Maw unleashed waves of plasma, turning asteroids to vapor. 2 human ships vanished in the first volley, but the humans kept coming. They used the debris as cover, darting in and out like hornets. Every hit was small, but together they added up. Lisa stayed in the command ship, eyes locked on her screens. She watched the Iron Maw's systems fail one by one. Life support in Sector 7. Weapons control in Sector 12. She sent new commands to her drones, guiding them deeper into the ship's guts. Inside the Iron Maw, chaos spread. Kavor warriors stumbled through smoke-filled halls, their comms dead, their orders unclear. Some tried to fight, but without coordination. They were just angry men in armor. Others panicked. For the first time in their history, the Kavor felt fear. Torvak refused to yield. He sealed himself in the bridge and rerouted all power to the main cannon, a weapon that could fire a beam hot enough to boil oceans. He aimed it at Earth. Even if he died, he would take humanity with him. But Lisa had planned for this. Weeks ago, she'd studied Cavor ship designs. She knew their main cannon needed 10 seconds to charge. 10 seconds of perfect stability. She sent one last drone, a tiny thing no bigger than a shoe, straight into the cannon's focusing ring. When it pulsed, the echo wave didn't shut down the system. It made it unstable. The beam fired, but it twisted on itself, curving back into the Iron Maw's own hull. The explosion tore the ship in half. The front section spun into the void, dark and dead. The rear, where Torvak was, burned like a dying sun. He sent one final message before the comms died. "You win, but we will be remembered." Daniel didn't cheer. He just nodded. Then he ordered a rescue sweep. Even in war, humans picked up survivors. They found Torvak alive, half his body burned but still breathing. They brought him aboard not as a prisoner but as proof. The battle was over. The Iron Maw was gone. The last great threat to Earth had fallen. Back home, people watched the news in silence. No one celebrated loudly. They were too tired, too scarred. But in small ways, hope returned. Light stayed on longer. Children played outside. Farmers planted seeds in fields that had been empty for months. The galaxy noticed, too. Neutral systems that had stayed quiet now sent messages, not of fear but of respect. The Morelli offered to help rebuild. The Zenthar apologized again, this time with real sorrow in their words. Earth had not just survived. It had stood tall when every other species had bowed or broken, and now the stars looked at humanity not as prey, but as something new, something to reckon with. And in the quiet aftermath, as Daniel stared out at the endless dark, he knew one thing for sure. No one would ever vote to enslave Earth again. Parfewire, the Galactic Council chamber hung in deep space, a ring of polished stone and glowing alloy built long before humans walked upright. Once it was a place of judgment. Now it was a place of reckoning, and for the first time in its history, a human ship docked at its main gate without permission. Daniel Cruz stepped out first, his boots clicking on the smooth floor. He wore no uniform, just a simple jacket and pants, but he carried himself like a king. Behind him came Lisa Moran, her hands tucked in her pockets, eyes scanning the room like she was already taking it apart in her mind. They were not soldiers here. They were representatives, and they were not asking for mercy. The council members sat in their high seats wrapped in robes, shells, or energy fields. The Morelli envoy, Krell Tan, gave a small nod. The Zenthar delegates kept their many eyes down. The Cavor seat was empty. Torvak sat in a side chamber, guarded but not chained, waiting to speak when called. The silence stretched. Then the high speaker, a being of shifting light named Elvora, cleared her throat. "You were not invited," she said. "We weren't asking," Daniel replied. "We came to talk." The room stirred. No species had ever spoken to the council like that. Not in centuries. But no one interrupted. They had seen what Earth could do. They had seen fleets burn and empires tremble. They knew better. Lisa stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She held up a small device, a data chip made from recycled alien metal. "This holds everything," she said. "Your secret votes, your lies, your plans to strip Earth of its people, its history, its future. We could broadcast it to every system in the galaxy, but we won't." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some looked ashamed, others angry. But all were afraid. "Why not?" asked a Morelli elder. "Because we're not like you," Daniel said. "You voted to enslave us because you thought we were weak. But strength isn't just about weapons. It's about choice. And we choose not to become monsters just because you were." He paused, letting the words sink in. Then Lisa spoke again. "We don't want revenge. We don't want slaves. We don't want your worlds. We just want one thing, a seat at this table. Equal voice, equal rights. No more voting on our fate without us in the room." The council was silent for a long time. Then Krelton stood. "The Morelli agree," he said. "Earth has proven its worth. Not through conquest, but through resilience." One by one, others followed. The Zenthar, still shaken by their own shame, offered full reparations. Clean water tech, medical knowledge, even help rebuilding cities. A small bird-like species from the outer rim proposed a joint research pact. Even the Cavor, through Torvak, sent a message. "We were wrong. Let us earn back your trust, not with words, but with action." Elvora looked at Daniel. "And if we refuse?" Daniel smiled just a little. "Then the galaxy learns what really happened. And every species that stayed silent while you planned our enslavement will answer for it too. She didn't argue. She nodded. The motion passes. Earth is granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and protections. No cheers came, no grand ceremony, just a quiet shift in the balance of power. Humanity was no longer a subject. It was a sovereign people among stars. Back on Earth, the news spread fast. People gathered in streets, in fields, on rooftops. They didn't riot. They didn't cry. They just stood together, looking up at the sky like they were seeing it for the first time. Not as a threat, but as a home among many. In the weeks that followed, alien ships returned. Not to conquer, but to help. Morelli engineers worked with human builders to repair cities. Zenthar doctors shared cures for old diseases. Even Kavor labor crews arrived, volunteering to clear wreckage, saying it was their duty to heal what they tried to break. Lisa opened a new lab in orbit, where human and alien scientists worked side by side. She taught them about Earth's way of thinking, messy, emotional, full of trial and error. They taught her about cosmic currents and star weaving. It wasn't perfect. Misunderstandings happened. Tempers flared. But they kept trying. Daniel took a different path. He stepped down from command. He bought a small house near the coast of Maine, where the ocean met the land in quiet waves. He planted a garden. He taught kids how to fix engines. Sometimes he looked at the stars and remembered the fire, the fear, the fight, but mostly he just enjoyed the peace. Years later, when the first human child was born on a joint Earth-Morelli space station, the whole galaxy watched. Her name was Elena. She had her mother's eyes and her father's laugh. And when she took her first breath in zero gravity, a message went out from every council world. Welcome. Earth had not won by destroying its enemies. It had won by refusing to become them. It had shown that mercy could be stronger than force, that unity could rise from ruin, and that even the smallest species could change the course of history. And in the quiet hum of 1,000 worlds now listening, one truth echoed louder than any weapon ever could. Never again would anyone vote to enslave Earth.